Whenever you have a technological revolution, you have two choices. You either build for freedom or you watch as others build for control.
AI is already smarter than us. We're literally monkeys building humans. We should be scared.
If you're not using AI, you are just slower. We've been spending our whole lives in Minecraft survival mode, and now we're going to get to play Minecraft creative mode.
AI is, in my opinion, dramatically underhyped right now. This is a revolution in terms of units of cognition. If you look at the areas AI can transform, it's probably $5 trillion in headcount.
We've been spending our whole lives in Minecraft survival mode, and now we're going to get to play Minecraft creative mode. You know, and that's like the I think that really is like the really exciting future that we're heading towards. You know, I think the main thing I would just call out is like, I think human creativity, human passion, you know, desire to build things of meaning, I don't think that stops because we have some really smart AI or anything like that, right? And I think if anything, we're going to be able to spend a lot more time doing that. You know, we're going to do really cool things. You know, one of the things that I always think about is like, if you just imagine folks from thousands of years ago, you know, looking at us today, like sitting here talking about this, right? And it's funny to think that in the sense that like, probably most of what, you know, most of these white collar jobs out there, it would be crazy for them to even think about it as work. You know, it's like you sit there, you're talking in the room with other people, maybe you're pushing buttons on this thing or whatever, and you call that work. You know, you're not in the fields, you're not actually like pushing things around, right? And I think that we will go through like another level of that, honestly, with AI, where we will similarly, it's, you know, we might still call it work and think of it work, but it's going to look more and more like really pursuing your own passion and building great things and building really cool things. And I think that, and I think that that's going to, you know, it's at the end of the day, I think we've made a ton of progress over the last, you know, thousands of years, but there is still like a lot of suffering. There's still like a lot of, you know, things that we don't need to have, basically. And I think getting to the point where people can really just do what they want to do and build really exciting things and put things into their life's work that they create is really exciting. I mean, it with Devin especially, I mean, we're all programmers ourselves, obviously. And so we love coding, you know, we love building software. And I think one of the big things that is really, really exciting about it is, you don't stop building software just because, you know, you can have AI that helps you write code, right? I think I think if anything, we're going to have way, way, way more great products, and we're going to have way more great ideas that we're going to be able to bring to reality because it's so easy. You know, everyone has so many ideas that they have of what they want to do and what they want to build, and being able to turn that into reality is just really exciting.
So we're recording this before the Reagan Economic Forum I'm going to this week. So I'm thinking in economic terms right now. And I love what you said with this like positive, like Minecraft creator mode.
Yeah.
And so in economics terms, that means that like productivity goes way, 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 way up, and it's massively disinflationary, and you just create things cheaply, whether it's farming, whether it's building, whether it's healthcare, whether it's education. How do you think of the timeline? I know it's a kind of an unfair question because you're thinking a very positive vision of this 10 years out. Like, do we start to see productivity just shoot way up in the next few years? Like, when should we expect this, or how do you think about that?
Yeah, and I think we have honestly we have a special lens into this because I'd say code is honestly the fastest growing use case of AI out there, and I think it's I think it is representative in the sense that look, in code it is real. It is very clear, you know, that if you're not using AI, you are just slower. But I don't think that you know, I don't think that leads to kind of a negative for us in the sense, if anything, it means that we all get to build a lot more and we all get to do a lot more, right? And so I think that is kind of the shift that we're going to see in a lot of these fields. I think on a per person basis, each person is just going to have their own team of AI assistants that's going to help them do a lot more.
And it's actually amazing if you think about it. The U.S. economy is, it's like a $20 trillion economy, depending on different ways of measuring it. So if you make productivity go up 10%, that's a $2 trillion a year, which equity-wise is a $20 trillion thing in 1 year, right? So it's even 5% is in the order of a $10 trillion of equity value. So it's actually fascinating, like the positive sum nature of this all stuff works, it's worth tens of trillions of dollars. And so, like, how do you think of the possible value and opportunity of something like Devin? Like, I think this actually is a multi-trillion-dollar opportunity because it's fixing such a big space. Is that the right way to think about these things?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think for us, it is the central question that always roots us in basically all of our product decisions and all of our strategic direction and so on is just like, what is the future of software engineering? You know, I think it's I think in startups people often get caught up in, you know, kind of figuring out fancy tactics and things like that, but it always starts from what is the future and what is the value that we're going to provide. And a lot of it for us is just the fun thing about this space is that the answer to that question basically changes every couple months. in the sense that, you hit a new tier of capabilities, you build models that can do these crazy new things, and that changes the whole experience of like, what is the right way that humans should be working with AI to write code?
What's a recent tier that you feel like you've hit? Can you give us some insight?
Yeah. One of the big ones that we've just rolled out actually is basically the ability for humans and AI to just, you can use AI to interactively plan and scope out the task, and then once that's ready, you can just hand that off and go. The similar thing is just even getting to the point where every time you file a ticket in Slack or Linear or Jira or whatever service you use, it's you just have your coding agent go and work on that, right?
Wow.
And I think it's crazy to think about because a few years ago, for example, like the GitHub Copilot and others were kind of some of the first to really kind of pioneer the AI coding space. And, this single line where it would give you a suggestion, which you could tab complete, that was all you could do in code, and it was because we had models that were pretty exciting, but obviously they weren't good enough that you would trust them with these bigger things, right? Yeah. And I think one of the really cool things actually is a crazy stat, which is if you look over the past few years since that kind of tab completion era, you can kind of think of an AI model or an AI system, in terms of how much work it can do in between interventions from a human, if that makes sense. And so it's can it do 5 minutes of human work straight in between, an intervention? And
because once the errors get to be too much, it just has to stop, basically. But it doesn't always know to stop, right?
Yeah. It's like until the human has to step in and give more feedback or something like that. Yeah. And the crazy thing is, over the last 3-4 years, that number has basically it's doubled approximately every 3 months in code. Which is 2x every 3 months is 4 doubles every year, which is 16x, right? And it is kind of over 3 years, that's about 4,000x, which is correct.
What is it over a decade? 2 to the 40,
which is a lot. It's about a trillion
X.
Yeah.
And
so we'll see how long that continues. And so far, it shows no signs of slowing down. But it really has over the last few years gone from systems where it can just complete the line for you and just do that 2 seconds of typing for you, versus now we have systems that are going to do hours of work. They're going to go build a feature or solve a bug.
I think it's about a quadrillion, by the way, Scott, not a trillion. It's a quadrillion, right? Or am I wrong?
2 to the 40.
Is it? That's a million squares.
It's
a million squares of trillion. Damn it! Yeah. Can we delete that part? Just kidding. I keep trying to get him. I lose. I'm terrible. Yeah, it's a million squares of trillion. This is really bad. This is why I shouldn't challenge him.
You had me.
I got you scared.
Yeah, I know.
That's funny because that would be a big deal if I was okay.
I was gonna ask you to cut that in.
No. Don't worry. You're right, Scott.
If AI can start moving up in intelligence, it's not going to stop at the human intelligence station. It's going to just race right by us, because all of these limitations that our intelligence has, so it's the size of our skull, like the brain can't get much bigger. Even if it could, it doesn't move. Neurons don't communicate quick enough for it to function as one system if it were too much bigger. But AI brains are at the speed of light. They could be huge and keep going. AI is editable, upgradable. All the AI in the world can share knowledge with each other and be this collective intelligence. There's just, suddenly it's going to pass us. And when it passes us, it's not just going to be, so this is the core concept that I think people think, okay, well, the chess AI has been beating humans for 30 years, 40 years. So AI is already smarter than us. And that's when you get to this key concept that I first understood in 2015, which is that there's 2 axes of intelligence. You can think of the horizontal axis as magnitude. So that's like the chess AI is higher than us at chess. It crushes us. Yeah. And then the other axis we can call breadth.
So it's like narrow intelligence versus general versus super intelligence.
So when people talk about narrow versus general, they're talking about the what I'm calling the x-axis, the breadth. Yep. And this is the thing that we're unmatched at, including today still. So AI is amazing at narrow skills. When you give AI a narrow skill, chess or map directions, or in this language, 100 things, it just quickly becomes better than us at it. Because again, it doesn't have these limitations. And animals, elephants can, I think, smell water from 400 miles away. Other animals use echolocation, or the dog's ability to kind of have a whole landscape of smell. Other animals beat us at certain narrow skills, but none of them can match our breadth. So this is called general intelligence, which is this idea that we can be good at anything. We can learn any skill. A dog can't learn any skill. And at the moment, neither can AI. One of the example you use is we have, so LLMs today are more general than they used to be. So LLMs can do a wide variety of things and really kind of impressive.
But they're more statistical engines than reasoning engines, right?
Yeah, and here's like a litmus test that I forget who I was talking to. Someone brought this litmus test up, which is LLM still can't run a gas station. Just because it involves all of these things that for us with general intelligence, it's no big deal. For an AI, it's going to have it's not there. So we're still the king of the general intelligence castle for now.
One of the interesting frameworks for this that I thought I want to push back on the super exponentials. Like my general view is it's extremely important, but I think the world works in these S shapes.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of times things get hit and asked for quite a long time. And so one of the interesting questions is if you try to do things we can't do with AI and LLMs and our reasoning right now, our reasoning engines, is that you don't know what questions to ask to get the job done. There's like a space that you can call like question space. And like one of the hypotheses is like the neural net for question space is a lot harder to build and define because there's only so much feedback you can get from reality to make question space better. And because think about it, if you want AI to do something, you have to know all the questions to ask to get it to do that. And so if you're like thinking in question space, it may be there's only like so much data and input you can have that you can only have a certain size neural net to do question space and get it right. And then one of the hypotheses is that human brains actually grew to the optimal size and no bigger of like how much data there is for question space to iterate, and therefore there may be like natural limits to certain types of intelligence if there's not more data to iterate on.
Yeah, this is all totally unprecedented. So we literally don't know if we're about to hit a big wall, or if the wall's way higher, the ceiling's way higher. But what's interesting about like AI until 2000 and really until pretty recently mostly was symbolic AI. It was programmed, specifically programmed logical steps that the developer programmed, and it executes. And so the programmer can tell you exactly why AI is doing what it's doing and how it works inside.
Not anymore, yeah.
This is a totally different thing. People say we don't build deep learning networks. We don't build.
No, we're building giant brains.
We grow them. We grow them. So you basically build a nursery.
Yeah.
And this thing grows out of it. And then we say, okay, who are you? What can you do? Are you conscious? Like, can you play chess? Like they didn't know that GPT-4 could play chess until like a year after it came out, and then people realized, oh, it's good at chess.
So this is a decade later since you wrote this, and obviously a lot's happened now. I think a few years ago you said in a Reddit AMA that you were in favor of pausing AI research because it's kind of scary and we don't know what we're growing here. Like, do you still feel that way? Like, how do you think about this?
I mean, we're in a quandary here because we have to ask, what is the scarier prospect? An arms race that throws caution to the wind and tries to accelerate the process of building these, superhuman brains, or slowing down and risking that China gets ahead of us and now has a massive technological advantage that might be, permanent. Mm-hmm. Those are both terrifying, I would say, to an American, or they should be. And the question is, what's scarier? What's the bigger risk? And so you can try to find that middle ground and say, listen, we should try to stay ahead, but go cautious while staying ahead. But now, China's shown that maybe it's going to be harder to stay ahead of them than we thought. Maybe this limit on chips is not going to.
Well, they're good at stealing stuff and then iterating on it.
Right. So I wish I had a good answer here. I think that we have to try to, what you would want is everyone to become scared enough of this thing to feel like it's, people should feel like Game of Thrones, where these are the White Walkers coming. And that's how we should think about it. No, it might not be. I think that there's a good chance AI is great and doesn't hurt us. The point is, but the downside we have to worry about because it could be bad. And if it's bad, it's going to be massively powerful. So we should think about it as, I think that I would hope that China and the U.S. could be grown up enough to say in this moment, like, let's not create like a giant existential risk for the whole planet by racing. We have to come up with some. Now, maybe that's naive and maybe that'll never happen. I just don't know.
The problem is anytime they're going to try to put some rules in place, they're going to be gaming it to try to trick us because there's no trust there. Right. And for good reason, because they have stolen a bunch of stuff.
So with nukes, we did bring down the number of nukes, right? Didn't we?
But nukes we all kind of understood about how well they worked, about where they were going. This is a very different thing. Like you can understand like, okay, the nukes are going to get bigger maybe or something. Like Tsar Bomba was just like much bigger, scary thing, and that's like kind of crazy. But it's I don't think it's analogous to like this. Not knowing where this thing goes and what we can put in place to have an advantage or not with it. It
still also required of a human to set off the nuke. The point
and it required
AI,
a massive industrial complex. Like you could have like 10 guys doing it AI.
Right. Right. And it's like if the nuke itself could wake up and start a nuclear, the nukes themselves could start fighting each other without our permission or consent, without our control. Like that's what we're dealing with. So.
Do you really think that's the biggest threat? Because for me, I still think it's people using AI for the next decade. It's going to probably cause the problems. But you're worried about the AI itself at some point.
I'm worried about both. I mean, I think that in the near future, of course, you're going to have a higher risk of bad guys with using AI, to do things like manufacturing scary bioweapons, things like that you really, things that could really kill a billion people. I mean, people with AI can, there's obviously the smaller concerns where, you can start to creating deep fakes and all of that. I mean, that's a big concern for civilization as well. But I'm thinking like, bioweapon or, autonomous drones, swarms of drones that can go into a city and specifically target, so. But I think as time goes on, I just think it's totally unprecedented. We're literally like monkeys building humans. I mean, like we should be scared. We should be scared of that. Like it could turn out well, but you kind of have to get lucky. And there's a lot of people that think we don't know how to do this. We don't know how to align this thing before it becomes too powerful to change.
The bioweapon one is probably the one that scares me the most. Not to talk about horrible things, but I do think it's fascinating. I do a lot in biotech as well, and we have all these new machines that are able to like construct and build like chains of things and build viruses and stuff like they did in China. Like maybe we should be regulating those. Like I'm by the way, I'm like so against regulation for most AI stuff because I don't think these like random people paid $100K a year are going to be able to like save the world from the AI. I think it's going to harass us and break things. But maybe there should be some rules around certain things in bio or something. Like,
well, so actually, I think you even helped connect me to some of these biotech companies, and I talked to a bunch of them, and I asked, they're all very optimistic. Most of the people building things are, and I would get so excited talking to them about, the incredible things they're doing for.
We're going to cure a lot of diseases.
Oh my God, cancer. Yeah. I mean, Alzheimer's. I mean, and then augmentation in ways that will become normal. And I don't think anyone want to come back to this world when we have this dumb medicine that it's smart precision medicine. And then I would ask, does this same technology, help the people who want to make bioweapons? And just yes, everyone said yes. And so that's going to have to be something we, but then hopefully maybe also the same technology can help create really rapid vaccines, really rapid, so there's going to be, it's like cybercrime and cybersecurity. I mean, there's going to be a good guys versus bad guys thing going on here.
I guess we don't know. This is like a fascinating thing about warfare the last few thousand years is you have the offense and the defense thing, which is better, right? Like cannons are such better offense that they changed the dynamic and you got rid of small cities. Like I wonder who wins in offense, defense, and bio. I don't know it well enough. Yeah.
And if the problem is if bio is not like, a cannon that can, screw a city over, if the offense wins with bio, like a billion people die,
Well, also, I mean, it's scary because you can imagine an AI or some evil person like creating something. Maybe I shouldn't be talking about these things, but they like could hide in you and then get turned on all at once by something. Yeah. And it's just like there's like really scary things they could do.
Totally, and that's a theme. Honestly, you look at any technology right now, and it's like, wow, the power for this to do good and like revolutionize everything and solve all our problems. And then it's like, wow, like the bad guys and with this in their hands could do some really bad things. And it's just it's high stakes.
This is why it's tied to the Fermi paradox very closely in scary ways.
Right. So I know we're on the optimist show, but the pessimistic view, the people would say something like, look at how this is going. It doesn't matter how good the good guys are. It takes us in one of these fields, the bad guys to get an edge for a little bit, and they can just wipe everyone out. And that's got to be so common that's why we don't see they all do this. And then again, optimists have a bunch of different arguments.
I guess it makes you more biased towards Elon's like, let's have the backup planet, let's have maybe some people living out by the asteroid belts. They could be like weirdos, but maybe just in case they could repopulate us or something like that.
And beyond just Elon, like when you remind yourself what's going on and the crazy stakes, it's like, let's be grown-ups, everyone. Let's be wise.
So you put a billboard up on the 101 recently outside of San Francisco that says AI is not your moat. What did you mean by this?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think for a long time in Silicon Valley loves the story of disruption, right? Just everything is disruption, right? And why do you like disruption? It's because you get to set the chessboard, turn over the big winners. It sounds like super cool. And so everyone likes to talk about these waves of disruption. We went from packaged software to the internet to mobile to, and the reality is that like, it's a way overused term. There are innovations that are actually disruptive. Like crypto is fundamentally disruptive structurally to the incumbents because it's a very hard leap for them to make. The internet was fundamentally disruptive to packaged software because the whole distribution model was so different and the way you do business was so different that it actually changed everything. I'd actually argue that AI is kind of like mobile. it's not disruptive. It's great tech. To be clear, it's important. But just as the internet, I would say that just as like mobile was just more internet and pervasive internet, AI is just like more technology. It's like more cloud. It's more the same. What that means is that by default, the incumbents broadly should win.
Yep.
There'll always be an exception to it, right? Like, it's not a perfect model, right, to think about. There'll always be some exception or some way to make money. But when I look at AI, look, I'm sitting here scripting things that makes our fun more efficient. Like, I use it all the time. I'm there's incredible technical leverage in it, but I just don't think it's that disruptive, right? And so for me, if you're a money plower, if you're looking to put tons of money in and make a 2 to 3x, sure, there are opportunities in AI, right? And like, there are things to be done. I think the best thing you can do is hold the biggest companies in the world and call it a day. But as someone who wants to bet out of the money, you can't bet out of the money on AI, right? The AI is the money.
This is your derogatory term for people who have much larger funds as money plowers. I guess. I mean, I'm hearing this.
I have a few for it, but yeah, I mean, they're asset managers, they're money plowers. It's fine.
You're the creative guy on the side who's taking the giant bets, and they're just like pushing giant amounts of money.
The money plowers, it's a better business model. Right? Like, you will make more money as a money plower than you will but I'm an artist, Joe. I'm an artist.
I see. No, you are an artist, Sam. You interact with founders on a daily basis. What innovations excite you the most right now? Like, what makes you most optimistic about the future?
It's funny. I've been thinking a lot about this because I wrote my 2025 deck, and I really try to be thematic, like, and kind of pattern match, right, back and forth. And, I'd say what makes me pessimistic, I'll start with that, Joe, is AI is so compelling to so many people that you're seeing a lot of people who are kind of running like a cookie cutter playbook of plus AI on blah, blah. And they're like, it's this thing plus AI. And you're like, it's just incredibly boring. And like, I also think it's kind of like, people like if you have someone who theoretically could have written their pitch deck using ChatGPT, it's like, forget about it. Right. Because it's just like, it's so boring. But I'll tell you what is exciting and what is interesting to me on the flip side is there is just new leverage in the universe with these tools, right? That you haven't seen before. And the level of creativity that some people are bringing to them, where they really are coming in and whispering a new secret of the universe or a new what if you haven't heard before, that's kind of mind blowing. It's a low end thing. Like, it doesn't happen that often. Like, you take the thing about being a seed investor is you have to listen to 100 terrible pitches in order to get the one gem, right? You have to be a shit shoveler in a way that later stage investors don't, because they kind of have that pre-screening to some degree of like, well, you kind of made it this far, right? But I will say that the like, oh my God, you just whispered me a secret of the universe, right? Or like a mind-blowing idea or a crazy idea. Like, there is just new excitement and new ideas like that cropping up at a faster rate than it was 2 years ago when people kind of didn't have great ideas, is my sense.
AI is, in my opinion, dramatically underhyped right now.
I love
it. I think part of that is, number one, we're seeing massive actual revenue and impact without that much adoption, right? So Azure's last quarter, they did like $28 billion in the quarter. I think they said 10 to 15% of that lift or growth was from AI products. So that would be what, Amazing. $2.5 billion or something.
Amazing.
Quarterly, right? Amazing.
But that's the infrastructure people are building on. So
Sure.
people are paying them. So are they making, are the things on top of it profitable, or are those things just raising money and build on
some
it?
things on top of it are doing extremely well, right? Midjourney is rumored to be doing extremely well financially. There's a variety of companies that are scaling very rapidly, but it's very early days, right? ChatGPT came out less than 2 years ago. And that was a starting gun for a lot of people to realize.
GPT-3 was only 2 years, huh? Yeah, it's amazing.
ChatGPT. GPT-4 came out 18 months ago. Okay. GPT-3 came out in, I can't remember, it was 21.
Yeah, this feels more like about 3 years, I think.
20 or something, yeah.
Yeah, okay. 2.5 years. That makes more sense.
3, you could kind of see things kind of working, but 3.5, 4 was when you really saw the sea change in terms of capabilities. And then ChatGPT got slapped on top of that as sort of a post-training thing. So on the one hand, I think it's dramatically underhyped because very little adoption is still creating these massive revenue streams, but also Klarna, the fintech company, mentioned that they reduced their customer success team by 700 people by adopting AI, and they suddenly had 24/7 availability in 30 languages with a higher net promoter score, faster response time, higher customer success.
We've seen already like a lot more money go into this wave than anything else in a very long time. It used to be like,
Sure.
How much money is right? Like, what would it be not underhyped?
Yeah,
you know?
I think what people are really misunderstanding is what is going to be the end product. And I think the end product is units of cognition, right? You're going to be effectively paying for or renting something that's going to think or do things on your behalf. And that could be legal documents, That could be a customer success team effectively. It could be a software engineering team, which is basically bots writing code for you. And so really this is a revolution in terms of units of cognition, right? And I think that's very underthought about as actually what the product is going to be.
It's interesting because deploying it right now, for example, in the services area, I'm building a bunch of companies in that area, and it's not pure cognition. It's like right now, it's like doing things to save people tons of time and make each person able to do like 3 times or 4 times as much work
huge,
too.
Right?
So it's like for example, like an auditor, like you can bring up right away. There's 10 screens they're most likely to look at all around, and that way right away they see it, and that way they saves them for just like 5 minutes each time, you know. And so saving them it's making them 3 times as fast. So so it's interesting because right now that's more man-machine symbiosis. Do you see that? That staying as man-machine symbiosis, or do you see the auditor eventually pretty soon getting thrown out?
In the long run, I a couple years ago, I wrote this blog post that I never published. I just never got around to polishing it. I should put it out. I wrote this maybe 5-6 years ago, which is basically positing that there'd be like 3 eras of mankind in terms of, or 3 eras of intelligence, right? And the first era is basically people. And the second era is some hybrid era where it's if you look at the number of intelligence units or whatever you want to call it, the relative brain power, you'd have a mix of, humankind and machines. And then eventually it's going to be mainly dominated by machines in terms of just sheer number of brain equivalents that'll exist out there.
Just because it's just easy to build like so many more of these things.
You can scale it fast with a bunch of chips and software. And
but the idea is these are like serving us and they're like work for us, or is the idea that at some point they're not doing that?
I don't know what the very long run looks like, but in the short run, my team actually looked at this. If you look at, for example, the services world in the U.S., or if you look at SaaS and enterprise software in the U.S. is about $500 billion a year.
Yep.
If you look at the areas of AI or the areas of services that AI can transform, it's probably $5 trillion in headcount, right? Costs. It's just paying employees.
Well, it's $5 trillion in all services in the U.S. Our best estimate's about 40% of that right now could be transformed by AI.
And then you take a cut of that, and you take 10 to 20% of that. But our math was basically, if you say take a 10% cut and transform employee headcount costs into SaaS software, you're back to $500 billion, and you've recreated the entire enterprise software market cap.
No, it's true. I think in the 2.1 trillion that we think could be addressed right now, stuff like healthcare billing, logistics billing, auditing, whatever, some legal stuff, we think already you can at least double the productivity, which would be kind of $1 trillion pull out, right? Which is huge.
Yeah. And then you capture some subset of that, right?
No, so people should definitely give money to all of our funds. That's what we're going to. It's a big thing.
It's just again the unit of work that we're selling is different from we're selling. We'll eventually be selling units of productive intelligence. And that's a new type of SKU that nobody's ever thought about or had before. Because the prior waves of machine learning, I think where people misunderstand AI right now is we've been talking about AI for 20 years. And that's because we had these prior waves of machine learning and convolutional neural networks and RNNs and GANs and all these other types of networks. But they were a very different fundamental, both architecture, but also type of product. Really what those things used to be good at or still are good at is pulling out statistical associations between large data sets.
Yep.
And so they're really good at stats, is basically that prior wave. Yep. The current wave is really powerful in that it's actually understanding and generating language and images and other things associated with that. It's basically, and this is based on this new architecture called the transformer architecture, which was invented at Google in 2017. Yeah. And that's been the big transformation. So it's actually a different technology curve from what we had before, but people call both of them AI. But I think we need almost like a segmentation of these things because we're on a different trajectory right now.
When you say a curve like this, to me, it seems like the curve is more like this, but I could be totally wrong. You think it's going to, I mean, is there going to be a GPT-5 and 6 or whatever from someone else too? Yeah. It's going to just be exponentially better than what we have right now.
It's not only exponentially better, it's impacting other fields. So you look at what Waymo is doing for self-driving or Tesla for self-driving. They've moved over to a transformer backbone and suddenly they see dramatic improvements in what
No, I mean, Elon said he got rid of all of the lines of AI just by using AI, got rid of 300,000 lines of heuristics basically in Tesla's AI for driving, which is insane.
You just go to end-to-end AI instead of having all these little edge cases hard-coded in. And that's happening in every single field.
I want to push back because I agree it's like dramatically affecting all these fields. I agree, like I said, we're using it for services already, tripling the productivity in many cases. But that's stuff you could do with like where LLMs are today.
Sure.
And so the question is, when you go like this, the question is like, are LLMs going to exponentially keep getting better to the point that it like totally changes and improves it? Or are they hitting some kind of
they're
local
not even
maxima?
Close to an asymptote as far as I can tell. And I've talked to a lot of the main researchers in the field. The way I think about it is almost like a LLM steps. right? And when you had GPT 3.5 and you went to 4, suddenly legal opened up as a vertical. I backed a company called Harvey, and they showed me side by side 3.5 versus 4. 3.5
You
doesn't
couldn't do
work.
it otherwise, yeah.
It just doesn't work, right? You had a model update, suddenly you could do legal. What's the next step?
Podcast hosts.
Yeah. I think that one you could do with like GPT-1.
Oh.
But, you have these steps. And so it's this ladder that you're climbing. And eventually you're going to hit a point where it can do all of human services, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's GPT-7 equivalent or 8 or 6 or 10 or whatever, but we're going to get there.
So you really don't think of it in terms of man-machine symbiosis stuff. Like stuff we're building now to do these services and win. Will those companies still be valuable in 5 years because they can replace it with AI as it goes along? Or is it going to be some new, is it going to be OpenAI itself that just owns all of those things?
It's
on?
interesting. When I diligenced Harvey, I called a bunch of big law firms. And I asked them, how do you think about this? And law firms traditionally are some of the worst software buyers in the world, right? They don't really innovate. They're locked down because of security and privacy and other very legitimate reasons. But they tend to be very bad buyers, but they were adopting Harvey really quickly. And so I asked them, like, how do you view the future of AI? Or what do you think is going to happen? And I was surprised by how thoughtful and forward thinking they were on this, where they said, look, we think the nature of a law firm will change. Yeah. Because right now we hire, I'm making it up, 50 associates every year. Yeah. And 5 of them will make it to partner. But we now think that in a couple of years, we can just hire 5 associates to begin with. But then who becomes our partners? What do they learn along the way? How do we teach them? How do we screen them? How do we have a portfolio of people so that some work out and some don't? Yeah. And so they're thinking about the legacy of their law firms. And they're like, we don't know how to think about this future world. But it also means maybe you have 1 senior partner and 2 associates and 30 bots. Yeah. And so the whole thing kind of shifts.
But it's also interesting. So with Harvey, you have the model where you're selling to a law firm. A lot of my companies, when we call them AI services, we're literally replacing like the healthcare billing firm. Like we're competing and we're doing it all ourselves, but we're doing it way better for a fraction of the cost. Like, are you seeing a lot of those companies right now?
Absolutely.
As well?
Yeah, it's both.
And I guess what's your intuition? Let's just say for the sake of argument to scare people that you're right and it's going to get way better with GPT 5, 6, 7 or their equivalents. Yeah. And is it the case that by GPT-7, maybe they just like do it out of their company themselves even better than our services company, and all of a sudden they're competing with us directly, or if they wanted to, or
it's always possible, but I think it comes down to like what is the other tooling that's needed around what you're doing or what you're providing. And so the things that I'm bullish on are where you own a workflow for a vertical. Yep. And so everybody in that vertical is using that workflow.
So you own the workflow directly.
Yeah. And so if you upgrade the model, it just makes that workflow better. Yep. And so it doesn't matter what the model
That's how I see it. Maybe challenge this model for me just really briefly. I talk about 5 layers for the AI value stack. So the bottom layer is like NVIDIA and chips and everything. The next one's the data centers that all of our friends' family offices are putting tons of money into. And then it's like the models, whether it's Elon's X or OpenAI, Anthropic. Then it's like level 4 would be the tools for deploying AI, which there's a bunch of interesting ones.
Infrastructure,
like data infrastructure, Palantir trying to do things there. A lot of interesting things there. And then level 5 is actually owning the workflow services company. That's where I'm building like probably a dozen things right now. Which I'm sure you're doing a lot too. So which of those 5 are you most bullish on? Which are you spending time on?
Yeah, I'm mainly spending time on the top 3.
And is that the right way to talk about it?
Yeah, I mean, I have a slide that literally has that in sort of presentations I give and stuff. Cool. The bottom side of it, the chip side, I actually invested in 2 companies 7-8 years ago, thinking that there would be NVIDIA competitors, and I was totally wrong. Right?
Yeah, that was really hard. That was really hard.
It was just so good. They're just very good. And there's still room for other players. I'm just saying, like they've really executed well. But yeah, I've mainly been focused on the top 3 of those layers. The other thing I've been doing is actually I've now backed 2 AI-driven buyouts, where the idea is you buy the asset itself and you can radically change the cost structure or increase the leverage of our organization by putting in AI in a deep way. And then that entity can go and roll up other companies in its vertical. And so I think that's very exciting.
This is what we're doing too, like with the healthcare billing and the logistics billing and other ones like that, is we'll grow organically at first, but then we'll go inorganically. And there's principles for inorganic growth with AI that are pretty crazy right now. AI poses a really interesting challenge for us because it's becoming an operating system for a lot of things. And already there's a lot of industries where like 20% or even 50% of people's time and action is in some ways dictated by the computer. Like the computer, by seeing everything, by knowing what's going on, is very powerful, suggesting what to do next. There's some really advanced areas of healthcare where this is probably actually what you want, is for the computer actually to be wiser and show what you can opt out, but you're probably going to go with what it tells you to do in lots of cases. And so in some sense, we are creating this control layer for our civilization that we are going to be following more. And I mean, is that authoritarian by its nature? Is there a way for that not to be authoritarian? How do we think about that?
Yeah. one of the most interesting questions. So there's a mathematician named Alfred North Whitehead who says that the measure of civilizational progress is the extent to which we can perform important operations of thought without thinking about them. So what is he saying there? Well, what he's saying is we should offload. He's saying like offloading is good. Example is I woke up this morning, I jammed a toothbrush in my mouth, and it wasn't because I had reason from first principles on dental health,
You
right?
want to just do certain things by default.
You do certain things by default. And moreover, that is what enables you to think about other things. Like it builds up this edifice of civilization. So on the one hand, we should automate quite a lot. On the other hand, history gives us cases where we've automated too much. Normal people who don't have great evil, genetically or they weren't engaging in active malice, became concentration camp guards because they outsourced gradually, bit by bit, pieces of their moral deliberation.
Just going along with what people were doing.
Exactly. So letting people think for us can be very bad. So this introduces a very big paradox.
It's like the Stuart Mill quote, correcting and adjusting his opinion by claiming it with others. So like there's certain people who they just did automatically just to think what everyone else thinks, right?
Yeah, and Mill, I think, has a very keen observation that we tend towards passivity. Like human brain works on glucose. There's only so much glucose to go around. We're biologically wired to be passive. So AI presents this very interesting, sinister, it's very good in the sense that it can offload plausibly everything, but it's bad in the sense that it entices us to give up more and more. And so one thing I think about is like, let's make this practical. I think about what are some patterns we want to avoid? And one is like autocomplete for life. Like you're familiar with autocomplete, you write, you get another word. Like I don't want that to show up in all of life.
Which is the scary thing for some of AI. I could just suggest what to do next, right?
Yeah. And you have kids. Like I'm sure that your kids, when they use AI, engage with it actively.
We don't actually use screens very much because I'm a little bit afraid of the interactions with them. And like what, I see a lot of this AI designed as it is right now as like, it's a form of drug in some sense, right? Because basically it's trying to trigger your brain with whatever dopamine to do certain things that are the goal of the platform. And I'm willing to take risk with myself with that form of AI drug. I'm not willing to take risk with that with my kids yet until I know more about it. Maybe that's a little bit too cautious, but that's how I see it.
So I think everyone who has kids like can really understand this. There's another thing that I think sometimes about is like, let's say you go to a new city, okay? Today you can get a recommendation for a restaurant, a neighborhood, a bar that fits your energy. Like, it can do this today or maybe next month, right? But take it up a notch. Let's say that it can recommend the perfect date based on her psychological profile, her family history, all this sort of stuff. And then take it up another notch and say it can sort of script out when should you tell the childhood story? When should you show vulnerability? When should you lean in for the kiss? And then imagine that's your whole life. And when I say this,
it'd be terrifying.
Well, that's it. Like you get this chill, right? You get this, like, you don't know exactly why you don't like it. But I think if you do, some people may think that that's optimal. I've met some people that think
they just want to be told exactly what and when.
Exactly.
It's like a very, I guess you define it as, I don't know if beta is the right word, but it's a very cautious way of living your life.
I think it's NPCs or sheep, right? Like non-player characters.
It's the NPC non-player character thing. There's something like that. But that's scary because the average person maybe is that way and they do want to be led.
Well, so I'm hoping that examples like that can kind of shake us out of this and say, look, we need to hold on to this precious idea of autonomy, which is to say individuals deliberating on and acting upon their own version of the good and not being coerced by others. In other words, not being made the agent of another. AI is very good at controlling a choice architecture.
The simple form right now that we're already dealing with in our world is social media, because a lot of people spend 4, 5, 6, 7 hours a day, more even on these things. And, another Stuart Mill quote, sorry, I have him because I was just thinking I was trying to read ahead of time for these things. But, he who knows his own side of the case, knows even little of that. Basically, if you only know your own side of the case, you actually
comes
know
from Cicero. He actually channels that from which is really cool.
It. That makes sense. And so, in some ways, if AI is taking you along, it's also keeping you in a bubble, which is happening, I think, to tens of millions of people on both the left and the right now, because basically you're happier in your bubble.
Yeah.
I'm not happy in my bubble, by the way. I really enjoy going and it freaks me out sometimes, but I go onto the far left side of Reddit and I go to these other places and I want to be challenged. I want to see what people are talking about. I want to understand, the other ideas on Blue Sky, as much as that's kind of a toxic place, but it's interesting to see. Even though I spend more time on Twitter or X, obviously, but isn't the AI naturally going to keep us in our bubbles based on these NPC preferences?
Yeah, I think today that is the way it works. And you get, as you said, you either get kind of an impoverished echo chamber where you don't have access to these wide and diverse views, which means you don't have access to, it's not truth seeking. And it actually isn't good for the development of reason. I mean, Mill makes an incredible case, chapter 2 of On Liberty, that even the wrong opinion, even being exposed to like things that are super wrong, that's what's necessary to even have like a lively impression of what's right.
Yeah, because it helps you correct it and helps you understand.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, if I say, hey, Joe, I think all values are relative. You know, I think it's, you know, you would like be hit with this and you'd like have to formulate, and it's good. That's good for you to have.
You don't want to protect people from dumb ideas. You want to engage with them.
You don't. And the other good thing is, or the other thing that I think is concerning is it could create a hall of mirrors culture where everyone has a kind of a self-curated reality, very convenient, ideal even.
Wasn't the problem is AI lets you personalize a really complex reality just for yourself that just keeps you feeling safe.
It does. I will say though, there are other ways, right? Like a provocateur AI is a really interesting concept that we're thinking a little bit about now, which is like, how about an AI that challenges you? How about an AI that like puts you out of your comfort zone in ways that you don't understand?
What percent of humanity opts into that though, versus opting into this like really soft, like nice world?
Yeah, so it depends, right? Like, so when you use a Bloomberg terminal, you actually want to optimize for decision quality.
Yeah.
When you are scrolling at night, you're kind of in engagement mode, right?
Yeah.
So what does that tell an entrepreneur? Well, it tells maybe like, look at those markets first, where like decision quality actually
Interesting.
matters.
So actually, there's actually a professional need to make a good decision, need to understand the world. That's where you're going to get people to engage with like much healthier areas.
I think that's right. And I have this optimistic hope that it can trickle down, that actually like you can show better decision quality and we can work out the engagement. It doesn't have to feel terrible to do that. It doesn't have to feel painful. Like Socratic, you know, dialectic actually feels quite fun. It feels hard, but like if you do it right, it's a blissful experience. So I'm hoping that can kind of trickle down.
I want to jump to just high level for people, the various approaches right now that dominate the AI discourse, right? So there's, I think you define these, there's the doomsayers, there's the accelerationists, I think there's the regulators, and there's techno-authoritarians, and there's a forlist. So what do you think of each? What are the doomsayers, first of all?
Okay, so that's the most, that's the intellectual incumbent, I would say. That's the most dominant philosophy in the practitioner community. And it's 3 philosophies in a trench coat, but they're all very entangled. One is effective altruism, one is rationalism, one is long-termism. So 3 things, you might hear these terms, but you can kind of put them together and say those are like the doomsayers. And the gist of it is that AI could pose a risk to humanity and we should pause. It's kind of like Oppenheimer when he had this, you know, hubristic awe of his own creation.
Yeah.
Or you could say like a tragic kind of Prometheanism where like we got fire from the gods and now we regret it or something like this. And so that school tends to then follow, like, one of the main equations, people get mad at me for saying this, but this is actually the way that a lot of folks think about it, is even a tiny probability of doom multiplied by negative infinity utils equals negative infinity.
I feel like this is Elon's comment on it as well.
So Elon, I think, is an interesting person because he's like, kind of started from this position, and then I think he's moved forward to a more positive view on, you know, interplanetary life and sort of those.
He's naturally an accelerationist himself in everything he does, but then he also has in the back of his mind this awareness of that utility, which is scary. Yeah.
And it's a very math ready kind of proposition. It appeals to those who think that reasoning is the same as Bayesian stats, or that morality can be reduced to like a currency that can be optimized.
Tell me more about that. What's immoral about the doomsayers?
Well, so I mean, the key premise is that moral questions can be reduced to a thing that's called a util, or to a common currency. This is something I would reject. In other words, I think that endemic in morality is the idea that you have a bunch of good things that are incommensurable. They can't be calculated, like courage, you know, courage in battle, familial love, religious observance. How the hell do you compute those things? You can't. They're actually sharply heterogeneous goods. And I think because you can't do that, the sidestepping move that a lot of these folks do is they say, well, the thing we really care about is human life. We're just going to focus on human life. It turns out there are a lot of other human goods than mere life that we should be focused on.
Yeah, we don't want to be in the matrix.
Yeah, and so it's that. So I reject those premises. The other thing is that we're very bad at predicting the future. Like the car came around and then it sparked the sexual revolution. Who predicted this? You know, when you have complex socio-technical systems, it's very hard to predict. You can pretty reliably predict like along the lines of scaling laws, where like you add some compute, you get some performance. That's a narrow technical prediction. But then predicting within a broader socio-technical system, impossible. So this group has, I think, very low epistemic humility.
And let's go to the accelerationist. So
Yeah.
This is generally seen as a positive thing, but I think I think you say these people are pushing like towards like AI supremacy and innovation without considering some of the nuances of human flourishing. What do you mean by that?
So I think like the role of optimism, the power of markets, like I think I'm totally there with it. I think
I think a lot of times this is a reaction to the doomsayers where we're just gonna, this is broken, so let's just accelerate and let's not let these people hold us back and block us from fixing things. So that's where it comes from. But what are they missing?
Well, so I think they are taking this idea that, and I'm referring now to the more orthodox accelerationists, that, hey, human life began a certain way. It began because we spontaneously evolved some ability to absorb and harness energy. And I buy that. I think that's a plausible explanation for how human life started. Because it started this way, the logic goes, this is the ultimate measure. Our ability to absorb and dissipate energy.
This is where everyone talks about Kardashev level civilizations. Exactly. It becomes almost it's like a quirky thing to obsess over.
Yeah, and so it becomes like the ultimate goal is almost the ultimate end of human life is a kind of technological progress, or it's a progress in harnessing energy. I think that completely confuses the means with the ends. I think technology is incredible equipment for human flourishing, but
we do want to be a higher level of Kardashev civilization. That's probably very great because it gets greater ends.
And we want better technology and better energy. I agree with all that. But to say that that is the ultimate end of human life, that's what we move towards, gives you these kind of sinister conclusions, which is like we should pass the baton to this higher, better intelligence if we can. In other words, like
that's a pretty scary.
There's not a human good beneath it that we should intrinsically.
You want to be pro-human as part of this